Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the program. My name's Steve Mascord. It's White Line Fever Live, and what a great result this morning in the NRL for Canberra. If you follow Canberra, 24-20 at the Sydney Cricket Ground over the Premiers Grand Final rematch. What a game! But the other big news that happened just in the second half, just as the second half kicked off, is that we got news from Super League that the fixtures from September onwards, and we know that Super League's back, or is it? Because we've been reading stuff this week about the Wolfpack. So basically Super League have finally confirmed some fixtures, and this is just a coincidence. We knew it was going to come sometime today, but didn't know it would be in time for the broadcast. From Sky, Brian Carney. How are you, Brian?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I thought my beard was, unkempt. Yours is not unkempt, but it's far more spectacular. How long have you been growing that?
I think approximately 50 days ago. I shaved when we did the watch-along. We look back at that 2006 Great Britain and Ireland win over Australia in Sydney, and I thought I'd better shave for that. So I shaved for that, and I haven't had the razor on it since. I'm looking at Christmas now, Steve, because I know how hard it is to get a Santa Claus around Christmas time, and we're broadcasting games up until November. I might see if Sky will allow me to keep this, and I'll have a nice earner in December.
Now, I don't know how the sound is for the people watching on Facebook, so please try to speak up a little bit, Brian, but don't be concerned. You can listen to it back, and the sound will be fixed if you get the podcast. Patreon.com/White Line Fever. Now, Brian, I read the press release today, and what I got out of it is that these games are on August 2. They're going to be at Headingley, and then there's going to be other games at the Totally Wicked Stadium. They're both going to be triple headers, and then there's a list of fixtures only with no venues from September onwards. What's happening in between? What's happening for the rest of August? That wasn't clear to me reading the press release.
All right. Well, my understanding is this, Steve, that we go back on the 22nd or the 2nd of August, I should say, with a triple header. Then that's Hull KR Toronto, St Helens Catalan, and Leeds Huddersfield. I think I've got that right for the first three games. And they're playing catch-up then for that week. The round proper will start after that. We'll do back-to-back triple headers at Leeds for the first 3 weeks, I think, and then the Totally Wicked Stadium for the next 3 weeks. The gap that you think the gap appears where? I think we're going to be broadcasting 21 games in 29 days during August. So we're doing every game from every round for the month of August. So it's a pretty full schedule from our perspective. Your question was, though, you see this?
Well, do we go back to home and away after August?
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Steve. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you, yeah.
Are you there?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay, well, just bear with me, Steve, and I don't want to. I'll give you a scoop here if I'm.
I've got I can read the. I'll tell you what I'll do while you're looking at that, I will read the press release, okay? Betfred Super League is delighted to release the fixtures schedule ahead of the 2020 season resumption, which will see 21 live games on Sky Sports from August 2. It includes triple headers played over 2 days at Emerald Headingley Stadium and the Totally Wicked Stadium, which ensures greater control over the safety and well-being of our players, staff and match officials. Given the exceptional and demanding financial climate, the opportunity to play in front of home crowds has been front of mind in our fixture scheduling. As a result, from round 14, the schedule gets busier across the final 2 months of the 2020 season. The significance of home games to clubs and fans also means that dates and venues in the back end of the campaign will be reviewed as the season progresses, in line with government advice and in discussion with our host broadcasters, Sky Sports. The playoffs, comprising 4 teams, are scheduled for for mid to late November, while the grand final will take place at the end of November. Testing is now fully up and running, and all Super League clubs will be back in training by the end of next week. There are two significant, well-documented changes that teams will be preparing for. The 6-again rule will be brought into Super League, and the matches will be played without scrums, and the game being restarted with a tap. So my question to you, Brian, is: do you have basically 4 weeks of these triple headers before we get to round 14, and then it kicks into these fixtures that have been announced today? And Brian, we just lost Brian. I hope he's back. We lost him. I don't know. We had problems last week as well, but here he is. Hello again, Brian.
Hello again, Steve. Apologies. I don't know if that was me or not. So you read out the press release.
Yeah, and my question is that these double headers, are they on every week of August, and they're at the same 2 venues, and then the venues after that are being reviewed? Is that what's happening?
That's it. Yeah, as it's changing, Steve, and as government guidance stroke rules are changing, I think they're giving themselves the opportunity to assess it, middle to end of August, and decide then, do they continue using Headingley and the Totally Wicked Stadium throughout September, or can they go to individual home venues? And I think they'll schedule the broadcasts according to that. So if things don't change, or if, God forbid, we get a second wave, and we're able to continue in a second wave, it would be I would say, a more biosecure venue, maybe like Headingley.
And what do you think of the way the game has handled this period? Obviously, the soccer's been back for quite a while now. Rugby league has different challenges. Do you think they've done as well as could be expected, or what are your thoughts?
I think there's probably 2 parts in my answer, Steve. It's one is, how have they managed the day-to-day business of the situation that they have as a game have found themselves in, and that we as humans have found ourselves in. So that's one part of it. The second part, which is maybe not something you intended to touch on, is whether or not they had used the disruption of this period to reset, to reevaluate where they're at, where they need to go. And that's perhaps an argument or discussion for a different day, whether or not certain things need to be reset in the competition, salary caps long term, the management of the game, but budgets of all the clubs, whether or not there's going to be a total rethink on how we financially structure the competition going forward. I'm not sure that's happened. Maybe they've been preoccupied, and understandably so, with keeping their heads above water. I think they've done an okay job. I know the furlough has been a huge help to the clubs, a worryingly big help almost, I'd say. And if the furlough hadn't happened, I'm not sure where we would have been. So that's been a big help. And the broadcast monies have obviously come through consistently for the clubs, and no doubt that's been a tremendous financial assistance to them. I think they probably handled it, Steve, as well as they could. They weren't under the time pressures, I think, of the Premier League. You needed to crown Liverpool champions very quickly. So I think they've had a bit of breathing space. Of course, they've had some stuff. It's not been without problems. Catalan Dragons are in a different jurisdiction.
Hello?
Is an issue. The Toronto Wolfpack is an issue.
No, it's fine. You're still there, so we'll just keep talking. The disputes between the clubs and the players, I don't know if you call them disputes, but the drawn out negotiations. What have you made of that? Obviously, that's not an issue in Australia because everything's done centrally, and the governing body has so much more power in Australia than here, where every single club had to negotiate individually with their own players, and they're hoping that everyone's back to training next week. Could that, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is there a case for more central authority so that these situations are streamlined a little bit?
Yeah, I think there absolutely is. It's I think it's been a problem for a long time in the game, Steve. I'll go back to some of these details. Just gloss over a couple of the details of the story I'm going to tell. But I think the game was trying to decide on what ball they were going to go with, and they wanted to sign a deal with a ball manufacturer to bring in some revenue, pitch it that all 12 clubs, if it was 12 at the time, I'm going back about 20 years, would play with the same ball. And there was a loose agreement put in place, but then Wigan went and did a separate deal with Puma, and I think Bradford did a separate deal with Mitre for their own balls. So you lose the power of everybody in the competition playing with the one ball, and the commercial pull that can bring. I think that's an indication. That's a story to highlight the problem that we have had. It's that clubs tend to do their own thing, and we haven't had a central body strong enough to bring them all in together and to run the game centrally, which would be more streamlined. It should be cheaper. It should be more effective. Australia hasn't been without those problems. You've seen somebody come in, and I think by force of character has driven through a lot of changes that a consensus type of leadership wouldn't have got through. Mm-hmm. If that's not a contradiction in terms, I think Todd Greenberg would have been looking for buy-in from all the clubs before he made a decision. Volandis seems to have come in and said, look, this is the way it's going. You want me to walk? I'll walk, but if I don't walk, it's going this way. Get on board with it.
Yeah, and I mean the fact,
like Steve, I don't know, but it seems to me he's got.
Yeah, but the fact that Super League is actually just the clubs. I mean, that's what Super League is just the clubs, and the RFL say they're just there to serve their member clubs. You wonder who's actually putting the game first, because sometimes the interests of the game are not the interests of the clubs. The other question, Brian, we're very interested to hear your thoughts on Toronto. People who haven't been following it, Toronto have players in the country who have been here too long because of COVID-19, because of lockdown. And there are some concerns that they won't be able to ply their trade in this country because, and they may have to leave, may have to go back to Australia, and then it's a case of, do Toronto try and get in other English players when they're a Canadian club? It's like it's a bit of a mess. There's a couple of different viewpoints on this. I guess I've seen people say this has been bubbling away for ages. It's all Toronto's fault. And I've seen other people say, well, it's Super League and the RFL's fault because they should have dealt with the relevant authorities better. What are your thoughts?
Could I just jump back to the point you finished on when you said about the interest of the game and who's going to be monitoring the interest of the game? And it's a really important point. And I think you'd compliment Ralph Rimmer, and both publicly and privately, I've heard enough from Ralph and about Ralph's approach to this to convince me that he has got the interest of the game as a whole at heart in what he does. He is not bowing down to the Super League clubs as a separate body. So if the Super League clubs want something because it suits them, Ralph Rimmer is assessing that in the context of what is the very best for the game. And I don't think there's any sort of conflict in Ralph Rimmer's head. He's doing what he believes is best for the game, and I think it's an important point to make during all of this. Ralph has had the interest of the game first and foremost in front of what he has done, and not the Super League clubs. And previously there might have been a confusion as to what people were doing. Are they bound to the pressure of the 12 Super League clubs? No, Ralph's not bound to the pressure of the 12 Super League clubs.
When I said clubs, Brian, I meant all the clubs.
The greater good of the game.
When I said clubs, I definitely didn't mean Super League clubs.
No, I understand your point.
Yeah. So.
No. Sorry. Yeah, all the clubs. Yeah. But he's taking everybody's opinion, and he's looking at this. He's taking a holistic approach to this. In the past, there may have been an imbalance of pressure applied by the Super League clubs because they have the money essentially, and they have the loudest voice, and that was all being filtered into the RFL, and they would have to make a decision. I think with the separation, Ralph is now making a decision without being heavily influenced by the Super League clubs, if that makes sense.
Yep. And so Toronto, how do you read the situation there?
to address your well, I think you've got to go back to the origins of this, Steve, to address the current situation. On what terms were they allowed into the competition? What was the understanding that they would? What part would they play in a development plan, or was it done on almost a nod and a wink? We'll get you in, no problem. Yeah, just apply there. We'll see how it goes. Well, you're going to have untold problems if that was the extent of the rules or the agreement that you put in place for Toronto to come in. I object to Toronto not getting a share of the television revenues. However, if you turn around to and say to me that part of the agreement for them to be accepted in was that they would relinquish their share of the television revenues, well then I can't defend Toronto then putting their hand out. And these are the questions that are being asked. What were the terms of Toronto's admittance to the competition? Was it come in, get the Super League, and we will then reassess? Well, if that was the case, then I would put a strong case forward that they should get television money. The visa issue, let's call it for what it is. They're a club, a Canadian club based in the UK. They're not based in Canada. They're not. The weather is not the issue. They're not based in Canada for financial reasons. I understand that. It's cheaper for them to keep those players that are from England over here in England, live here, train here, and fly over to Canada to play games. But they're certainly not a Canadian-based club. I mean, it's look. You'd almost put an argument together to say it's a stretch to call them a Canadian club. They're based in the UK. They live in the UK. They train in the UK. They fly to Canada to play their games. You know, the season's over. They come back. They come back to their houses here. Now, listen. Maybe it's a new way of doing things. Maybe you could base a team in Poland and fly them, to the UK, or call them a Polish team, but base them in the UK. But what are they a Canadian club only in name?
Well, the administration is based there, right? The administration is based there, and the players live here, so they have an office there, and they have a commercial arm, and I think they're registered as a company in Canada, and the players spend a lot of time here. And the question is, under what arrangements do they come in and out of this country, and under what arrangements do they come in and out of Canada?
That's an important point. They don't spend a lot of time here. They're based here. That's like saying I spend a lot of time in England. I'm based in England. Now I travel 24 times a year to Ireland for work for Sky, but I'm based in England. I live in England.
Yeah, but you can come in. You can legally come in and out. You can legally come in and out. Obviously, they can't because Darcy Lussick got sent home last year. So, are they actually based anywhere? Are those players legally based anywhere? Sorry?
Well, this is, again, and you could go back and look at the Celtic Crusaders and the issues they had with visas, and that's still something. That's the festering wound for some players. That was glossed over. Some of the players were brought in on student visas, were in the country playing professional rugby league on student visas. Now, did Darcy Lussick have the appropriate visa to be staying in this country? They're not complex questions. They may sound complex, but if Darcy Lussick is playing for a Canadian club, he should be living in Canada and travelling to play games over in the UK. That would make sense. And then he'd have no visa issues. He'd be in Canada as a Canadian professional rugby player. But he's not. He's a Canadian, working for a Canadian company, we're led to believe, who are registered in Canada, and he's living full time in the UK. Well, you understand how that's going to create an issue.
100%. Can I?
I understand why they're based in the UK. I totally get that. I get why it makes more financial sense to be based in the UK. I absolutely understand that. But you're going to have complications if that's the case.
Yeah. I'll ask you one more question, and then I've got three more things I want to ask you. I remember the day New York had a launch up in Liverpool. I actually went to see Maurice Lindsay for my book, which is about another year where players were in a country under legally dubious circumstances. Paris Saint-Germain, those guys were pulled up at customs every time they had an away game. And I remember after that launch in